Hello, my name's Dr. Beechar. I'm a part-time salaried GP and I'm one of the directors of MedLight and Medical Education. Today's video is about knowing which empathy phrases to use in which scenario. This can be really tricky if English isn't your first language, and although we're going to go through 4 examples today, there's many examples of empathy phrases you can use. The best way to improve, if this is something you struggle with, is to practice communicating in English as much as possible, watch your colleagues, watch other people, and practice really makes perfect. But we'll go through 4 examples today. So we're going to talk about demonstrating empathy in a situation which is difficult but not that bad. Then we're going to talk about a second slightly more difficult situation. Then we're going to talk about demonstrating empathy in a very difficult situation. And finally, we're going to talk about demonstrating empathy in a situation where not only is it difficult, but the patient feels ashamed. So let's start with the first one. The situation where it's difficult but it's not that bad. For example, a patient with an ingrown toenail. You might say, "Mrs. Smith, that sounds really frustrating. Let's have a chat and see how we can best help." So if it's not that bad, something like "that sounds really frustrating" is a good phrase to use. Now, if it's something slightly more difficult, for example, the patient has back pain and they're struggling to get dressed in the morning, they're struggling to do things around the house, and they're also struggling to go to work, so it's having a significant impact on their lives, then saying "that sounds frustrating" isn't good enough. You need to demonstrate a bit more empathy. So you might say, "Mrs. Smith, I'm really sorry to hear how difficult this is making things for you. So I'm really sorry to hear that, but I've not made my tone too soft because although it's bad, it's not that bad." Now, if we take the example of a bereavement, instead of just saying "I'm really sorry to hear that" quickly, I would soften my tone. So I would say, "Mrs. Smith, I'm really sorry to hear that." So I've said the same thing, but with a softer tone. And I might add, "I can't imagine how difficult that must feel," to demonstrate additional empathy, because I can't imagine what it feels like to have a bereavement. It sounds like a very difficult situation, and adding "I can't imagine how difficult that must feel" just adds that little bit of extra empathy. Now, the fourth scenario, which we talked about, where the patients disclose something very difficult that they feel ashamed about. For example, they were abused as a child. You might say something like, "Mrs. Smith, I'm really sorry that you had to go through that, and thank you for telling me." And you're adding "thank you for telling me" here because the patient has felt comfortable enough to open up to you, so you're thanking them for that. You're making sure your tone is soft, so you're not just saying "I'm really sorry to hear that," you're softening it and you're saying "I'm really sorry to hear that." So empathy is one of these things where practice makes perfect, and knowing which phrase to use at which time, it takes practice. These are just 4 examples, but as I said, there's many examples of good empathy phrases at different times. This is something we cover quite extensively in our courses, and it's something where practice really does make perfect.